Thank you.
I thank the gentleman. I thank all of you for your testimony today. Mr. Woolard, do you agree with Mr. Katz and Mr. Kucinich that the 1705 program is working and it's worked well? Yes or no?
I believe that the project works very well for project financings where you have a large utility offtake.
And do you think it worked well in your particular case? I think on page 5 of your testimony, you and I'm quoting, the DOE's review process was extremely thorough and marked by thoughtful analysis. So you thought it worked well in your situation, their agreement to give you, how much money did you get, by the way, from Department of Energy and loan guarantee?
I fully agree with that statement. We got $1.6 billion, and it was a very thorough analysis.
Thorough and thoughtful analysis is your statement here. And do you believe any of the, do you believe you received the loan guarantee, there was any political influence at all involved in that decision, or was it based completely on the merits of the project, the Ivanpah project, and your particular company, BrightSource?
I believe it was completely on the merits of the project. We started the application in 2006 and went through a four-year period, a four-year cycle.
Okay. Well, this is where I'm confused, because you guys gave us 30,000 documents on Friday, and contained in those documents, I want to put the first email up if I could, was an email, because today you're telling us it was thorough and thoughtful analysis, and there was no political influence, and yet we have this email correspondence between you and Matt Rogers. Matt Rogers, the senior advisor to the Secretary of Energy for the Recovery Act. So this is the guy who decides things. You say in this email, I think it's interesting, the very first thing you say is, please don't distribute this. You know, we wouldn't want the taxpayers to know what's going on with their money. But down in this email, the last sentence, you say, Department of Energy's credibility is thin, and I'm currently trying to put off communications with people on the Hill. So which is it? Today you say they're thorough and thoughtful, and there's a good program and great analysis, but in this email, when you're trying to get the money, you say their credibility is thin. Which is it?
I never said they were fast. So as we went...
Well, no. This is not about timing. It's about credibility. You use the word credibility in this email.
Yeah, no, it is very much about timing. And if you allow me to explain, we had actually invested quite a bit of money at BrightSource in moving the project forward. And the government we had a conditional commitment, and the transaction had been contemplated to close in September of 2000, and this was 2000. Sorry, my eyes can't quite.
January 4th, 2010.
Yes, so September 2009.
Yeah. Well, let's move to the second thing, because you just said it was completely based on the merits of the project. But you say, can you see the big print up there where it says also, that last paragraph, next last paragraph, which starts with also? Can you read that first sentence for me? Also Darby at PG&E, that sentence? Yeah. Also, Darby at PG&E talked directly to Obama about the program's challenges and the bad situation it puts him in. Now, who's the Darby in that? Is that the head of Pacific Gas and Electric?
Yeah. So Peter Darby was the CEO of PG&E,
and they had a vested interest in getting this thing approved because you were providing them their required commitment for green power, right?
Yes. PG&E was very dependent.
And is the Obama in this sentence that in your email sent to the guy who's making the decision? Is the Obama I think it is? That's the President of the United States?
Yes, I had been told.
So wait a minute now. So just a minute ago you told me there was no political influence in deciding this, and yet in an email you sent to the guy who's making the decision, you referenced the President of the United States, who just had according to this email, had a direct conversation with the guy who cares pretty deeply about this thing getting approved.
Yeah.
So again, which is it?
For our project.
Was it based on the merit, and were they thorough and thoughtful, or were they no credibility and based on politics?
Our project, I can assure you, was based on the merits as I went through the process.
So then why did you think it was necessary to tell the guy who makes the decision that a guy who you know pretty well, who must have communicated to you directly, talked directly with the President of the United States?
Mr. Chairman, with all due respect, what I believe...
I'm just trying to clear up the confusion.
I'd like to help. What I believe that Peter Darby was saying, I don't know, was that he had many projects under this loan guarantee program. I believe a significant portion of many of his projects was dependent on this, and it had.
But the key is you thought it was important enough to cite in an email to the guy who's in charge of making the decision. And 1 month after this email, you got the conditional approval. Let me go to the next email if I could. This one is amazing to me. I mean, this is just amazing. It's another email from you to Jonathan Silver, Executive Director of the Loan Guarantee Program. And the email you start off, please see below a draft of the email our chairman, John Bryson, who's now the Commerce Secretary, chairman of your board, is preparing to send to the White House Chief of Staff, Bill Daley. So you're asking the guy who's in charge of making the decision on, now you're past the conditional, this is the final guarantee, you're asking the guy to proofread an email that your chairman's going to send to the White House Chief of Staff. And you say there's no political involvement? I mean, this is amazing. The person who makes the decision, this is not some kid asking their mom to proofread their homework. This is the taxpayer dollars by the guy who's going to decide. And you're saying, hey, can you proofread this even though you're going to make the decision? Because we want our chairman to send, who's going to be the next Commerce Secretary, we want him to send a letter to the White House Chief of Staff. And then you just said 2 minutes ago that there was no political involvement in the decision to give your company $1.6 billion of taxpayer money.
I believe that everything we did in our project was fully on its merits, and it's a very solid project.
Do you think it's customary? I think it'd be interesting to see what Mr. Nelson has. Do you think it's customary for a company to be able to say to someone who's going to decide whether they get a loan guarantee or not, hey, proofread this letter that our chairman is going to send to the White House Chief of Staff, that we're going to send to Bill Daley? That's unbelievable.
I believe that the letter that was contemplated to be sent was all around the program itself and making sure that the program...
Well, you read this letter. We need guidance and support from the White House. You know, that's amazing. Dear Bill, we need a commitment from the White House to quarterback the loan closure between OMB and DOE by March 18. Mr. White House Chief of Staff, can you approve this by a certain date? We need this. Unbelievable. Let me just put up one last thing because I know I'm out of time and I want to get to the ranking member. Let me put up, because we have the full chairman here, the chairman of the full committee here. We had Mr. Chu, I want to put up what the secretary said to us just 2 months ago in questions that I asked him. Mr. Secretary, how about John Bryson, former chairman of the board at BrightSource, now the Secretary of Commerce? Did that in any way influence your decision to give a loan guarantee to BrightSource? Secretary said no. Did the White House ever talk to you about any of these respective companies involving these individuals? Did someone from the White House, Chief of Staff, someone from the White House call you? And the Secretary said no. Mr. Chairman, I think we got to have the Secretary back in here because this is certainly his response to those direct questions certainly doesn't square with emails we got in a batch of 30,000 documents on Friday from BrightSource. And I think it's important.
Would the gentleman yield?
Be happy to yield to the full.
I will commit to you today that we will invite the Secretary back to clarify the record, along with letters to the administration, ask him to waive the normal presidential exclusion of conversation, since it's clear that there was direct conversation leading to a form of favoritism for BrightSource. We'll ask the President to give us the records of those conversations with PG&E and others.
I thank the Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I would just ask this too. To my knowledge, this is the first time we've had any direct link to the White House in the 1705 program. Is that correct?
To my knowledge, this discovery is the first.